what's the reason that you decided you wanted to leave? Like what happened?
Well, originally I got kicked out of the group. Um, it was disagreements between management and myself. And then one night we had a voting system in my group, and it was always two against one. If two guys vote against the one person, whoever the two are, they win the vote, no matter what it was. And he kind of, I believe, I'm not saying this is true, but I believe he kind of scared them into voting against me. You know, kind of like, look, if you let him in your group, he's gonna fuck your career up. You know what I mean? So just listen to me when I'm telling you and vote him out, and I'll fix everything. Don't worry about it. And they kind of trusted him for a second, and they voted me out the group. And I remember the day they came, you know, the road manager came to me. Not. We're on tour. Not. Look, the plane ticket, you got to go home. I'm like, huh? Like, yeah, they voted you out of the group. Well, I want to talk to Buff and Cool. Now they don't want to talk to you. Really? Okay. All right, I'm going home. And I went home. And then I get a phone call. We're going to give you another chance to come back in the group on a trial basis. If you act calm, you relax, you know, you do what we tell you to do, then everything will be smooth. All right. I got a phone call from a lawyer friend of mine. That's when my lawyer friend called me, and he's like, yo, they only want you back because Warner Brothers are ready to do Fat Tuesday, but they want all three original members. They're not going to do it if it's just two of them. So now I was like, word? All right, well, you know what? All right, thanks. I called them up and I was like, nah, I think I'm going to stay home. You know, and they were, of course, blowing my phone up, trying to get me to come back on the road. But I just felt violated at that time because I still hadn't spoken to Buff and Kurak all those months, you know, and I had gotten a story out of them or gotten an explanation of why they would vote me out. You know, I felt kind of betrayed. So I just decided not to do it. And it didn't happen.
Okay, now that brings me to a few things, because the thing that really impressed me about you guys, in addition to the music, was that you did do so much with, you know, yeah, like Cabbage Patch, you had movies, you had endorsements, you were doing songs with the refrigerator, you had all these things. So what, trying to get a better understanding of what you could have or should have done, given the fact that you guys, and you were doing worldwide and national tours, when there was literally a handful or less of artists that were doing that. So what are you referring to specifically that you didn't know enough or you could have done better? Because that, on the outside looking in, that was phenomenal success.
You got to understand a lot of matter of fact, 99.9% of that success that we had doing those movies and doing those tours and doing these commercials and doing safe sex things, my nuts, back in the 80s when nobody's thinking about doing that shit. All that stuff we did was all from our brilliant manager. I give him 100% credit. He's dope. Like he went to Warner Brothers and told Warner Brothers, you better give these guys a 3-picture deal because they're opening up for Michael Jackson on his next tour. And they're going to be everywhere. They're going to be the biggest shit. And if you missed out, then you missed out. There's no social media back then. They can't check it. How do they check that? Unless they personally know somebody that works with Michael Jackson, you know? And he got us our 3-picture deal based on him telling them that. Like he was rolling the dice and playing Rambo with it. Like, but it was winning. Everything we did was winning. He had such a creative mind. To this day, he is Charlie Stetler. I give him all the credit, all the praise. We went through a lot, beefed a lot, but he's dope. Dope ass manager, man. Really dope ass manager. I just think that he just had like a control issue that he wanted to control and didn't think that anything needed to be explained to anybody. And I just needed to know exactly where every dollar went. And that's all I needed. Just let me know where every dollar goes and I'm good. You know what I'm saying? This doesn't seem right. We just came off a tour and I got a check for $200,000. We just on the road for 8 months. Like we're doing 3 shows a day. Nah, it's not adding up right. Just show me where it adds up right. And I'm happy. I'll shut up. And I could never get that. So because I couldn't get that, you know, I just fought and got away from it. You know, needed to be away from that. I couldn't be with that. I didn't know that Russell Simmons would have signed us like this in a heartbeat. Like he's just a manager. A manager can be fired. You know, he would tell us, yo, like I can blackball you in the industry. Like, and they would believe it. You know, the other guys, they would kind of believe it back then. And I'd be like, get the fuck out of here. You can't blackball nobody, you know? And It is what it is, man. We both made a lot of mistakes back then. But and nothing you could do about it now, you know?
Nah, no. Well, you can use it to your advantage by
Moving
applying
forward. Yeah.
the right things, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Um, which ties back into the Fat Boys Are Back. One of the things that also has always intrigued me about the Fat Boys was your guys' commentary, like "Don't Be Stupid," for instance, about like story raps and social commentary. So why do you think that that didn't register or click as much with people since you did have really good songs like that early on and throughout your careers?
Um, you got to understand when you're the only guys doing something, it gets harder to sell it, you know, when you're the only guys doing something. If you got a bunch of guys and they're coming out and they're rapping and they're rhyming like Run-DMC, and then we come out, and we're rapping our own way, you kind of pick and choose what they like and what they don't like, or what genre they want to be a part of, or, what type of music they like. So it's just something that's uncontrollable. You can't control that. That's just the listeners here, what they're gonna like, what they're not gonna like, and unfortunately, a lot of the things that we did, and it kind of, that was the one thing that bothered me the most out of the Fat Boys musically. I kind of felt like we should always have stuck to our first, second album as far as what we're rapping about, the style of music, and all of that. And once we did Wipeout with the Beach Boys, it kind of, it showed the power of pop music, of popular music, and breakout hits. Run-DMC, Wipeout and the Fat Boys was our answer to Run-DMC Walk This Way, So I felt like that was great to do, but then stop it right there and let's go back to what we did in the beginning. And I couldn't get a response from anybody. It was just like, now let's do the twist now. Let's do Louie Louie now. And I think that's what kind of drove us musically into the graves and got less people and less people being involved and wanting to listen to, what we had to offer, Yeah, I think we definitely should have stuck to what we were doing back then. But once again, it was like, at that point, I'm 17 years old. 16, 17, I'm not fighting, and I'm the only one fighting. The other guys, they really don't want to mention it too much. They just want to go in the studio and record and get their check and go home. And I get that. But I'm thinking about the future. I'm fighting for our future. Like, yo, do you want to keep doing this? Do you want to keep going? That was my thing. And it was just a losing battle. I'm just swinging in the air, just not hitting nothing. You know what I mean? And it just came to a point where I was just getting frustrated, and it started showing, on the road. It started showing in the studio and stuff like that. But
okay, well, also for comparison, since the Big and the Beautiful album came out before Crushin' and Wipeout, Big and Beautiful also had Sex Machine. So that's clearly a cover, clearly a famous song, clearly something. So what did you see was the difference between Sex Machine and Wipeout as far as creating it, the marketing of it, and doing it?
Because when you're doing Sex Machine, you're doing James Brown. You're doing one of the sexiest soul singers alive, like for Black music, for our culture. This is a guy that we sampled. This is a guy that hip hop has grown off of, have paid royalties to this guy. His snares and kicks are so familiar in hip hop songs that you just can't run away from it. You can't get away from it. So to do a James Brown song is an honor. To do a Wipeout song is an honor with the Beach Boys, but it's something that you do once and you just leave it alone after that. You don't dabble in it too much. This is not our music, in other words. I'm sorry, this is not our genre, in other words. That's what I meant to say. Our genre is going to be more funkified. It's going to be more that bass line, that stamp, bam, them horns, bam, 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 get up, that sexy shit, that, you know what I mean? That's what we do. That if we're going to do a song with an artist where we sample it, it needs to be in that vibe, So I just felt like the Wipeout was cool to do for the movie, but I just think that after that, we should have went right back to our original plans.
Okay. So on Big and Beautiful, that also was where you really started getting credit for at least producing and taking a hand in the production side of things. So I know Curtis had left at that time for the third album, but then what made that where you really wanted to take more of a role on the production side and start making that move?
That was kind of like listen, there was a lot of disagreements going on between management and me. And that was kind of like musically, I mean, and that was kind of like my look, like I need to have a little more control in what we putting out. Like us, the Fat Boys physically need to have more control. So they bring in this guy who's really dope. His name is Dave Ogren. Dave Ogren, producer, comes in and he does a lot of songs in there. And he's really dope. And he has, his emulator and he has all the sample sounds and everything. And we catch a little vibe. I remember us catching a little vibe, and he's a, good vibe guy. Dope. Has the potential to be a super big producer, like superstar. And it was just basically like our first time at it, working around together and kind of feeling each other out. I personally love the Big and Beautiful album. That was like apart from the first one of my favorite albums, on a personal level. But listening back to it now, I wish I had, of course, like everybody, wish you had more knowledge of, what I'm saying, of what we were doing now, back then, that I could add so much more to it and make it so much, funky, and make it so much, fix things and everything. But we were just learning, growing up, man, just, trying to do what we could do.
Okay. And in '86, when that album came out, you had the Human Beatbox Part 3, which I always loved beatboxing, and you guys stuck with it for several years, and that's clearly part of the group. But in your opinion, since there were several that did it so well, why do you think it didn't sustain over the years?
That's the thing. These are things that, like, we wish we could go back and change. You know what I'm saying? Like, after getting more knowledge of those beatbox things that we would do. They needed to be so much more than what they came out to be. They need to have so much more to them. And we just didn't have that knowledge. So we just was putting things out, not really knowing, exactly what we were doing. And that actually frustrated me not too long after we dropped that. I'm like, damn, we should have did this different. This should have been different somehow. It should have been something different, but we just couldn't put our finger on it back then, But we always have our biggest fans that we had. And the reason why we won the contest was because Buff was beatboxing. When we're three guys from Brooklyn and we step out on that stage at the Fever on a Friday evening, a semifinal, I had a semifinal contest. It was the last semifinal before the finals on Monday at Radio City Music Hall. And we went up there with a group called the Bad Boys. And the Bad Boys were a group from East New York, Brooklyn, who I can explain it to you about T-Funk and them. And those guys, we were going up, like, when these guys win, they're going to put us on. You know what I'm saying? And at the last minute, they was like, all right, Disco 3, let's go. And we're like, huh? We jumped on stage and we performed, and Buff started rocking the beatbox. And if it wasn't for Buff being up there hitting them beats, like, we wouldn't have won that contest. We were all right with the rhymes and everything, but we were little kids. Like, we were so new to it. But Buff is what made the difference. So from that day forward, Buff is always going to be our shining example of what the group represents, that beatbox. We're going to put him on a pedestal. We're going to, let everybody see. When we did tours, Buff had his solo that was so amazing during our concerts. We would put him in a Muhammad Ali robe, under some Very Lights, and the Very Lights would start flashing with lasers, and he boom, 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 boom. And if you were there, you couldn't understand it if you weren't there. To hear him beatbox in person is some other shit. Like, it's some otherworldly shit. You really don't understand it unless you hear him in person. And next thing you know, he's boom, 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 and the lights are going crazy. It's just bananas. So we always felt on every album we had to showcase that somehow, even at the expense of not doing it the right way sometimes, that we'd have to look back on it and be like, fuck, like, it is what it is, man. But we tried our best. We were kids. That's all I can blame it on that. Blame it on the youth.
Be sure to check out the History of Gangster Rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
There will be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
With Fab 5 on Yo MTV Raps with NWA.
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national gangbang rappers.
The History of Gangster Rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the streets. You know what I mean? So it's always gonna be something to talk about.
The History of Gangster Rap in stores now.